Good afternoon. This meeting of the Preservation Board is now in order. I'm going to call a roll and establish who's here. Commissioner Byzantine, are you here?
Present.
Hamilton, are you here?
Yeah, present.
Commissioner Vines, are you here?
Yes.
We have other commissioners en route. Did I miss anybody? Not yet. Good enough. Commissioners, has anybody read the minutes of the last, oh, never mind that. Take a look at the agenda.
I have a question on the agenda.
Sure.
Item number G, the board acted on that proposal in May, as I recall,
Huh?
about 5 or 6 months ago. And I believe it would, my understanding is it would have been appropriate for them to appeal the board's decision within some time limit of that. Is it appropriate for us to really even consider this at this point?
Let's see. Counselor?
I think we'll need to hear from the staff. I don't know if it's exactly identical to something in the past or if there's a deviation. I think we'll need to hear more of why that's on the agenda.
Okay.
We haven't had a conversation about it.
This can be on the record.
Yeah.
It's an addendum to the approved permit. So we approved what the board asked for, and now they're coming back and wanting to change it.
So it's an
So it's an
addendum.
application.
Okay, it's a new application, addendum to what was already
Right,
approved.
right.
So it's new subject matter?
It's basically what they want what they applied for the first time and didn't get. But it's a different application though. It's not the same.
To me, it seems like
How-
they're
how is this
appealing
an
a prior
appeal?
decision.
Well, because we denied it.
Oh.
Because it didn't meet what. the
Got
board
it. So this is
conditions.
this is an appeal of a director's denial, not an appeal of board's conditions.
No, it's, well, yeah, I don't.
And it's not an identical application to what you received before?
Not exactly, because there were some changes we made that they did make. So this was a specific part of what the board asked for.
As I understand it, this is an appeal of the decisions, the specific decisions the board made before that the director is following through on.
I tell you what, can you bring me the old file so I can see?
Go see.
Okay. And I would say let's table it, but we're not on that item. And can we revisit that when I take a look at what we
Okay,
have?
let us table the discussion on whether or not this is our final agenda, and we will come back to that. Has anybody read the minutes of the last meeting?
We approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are the minutes of the last meeting. Commissioners, we do not yet have an agenda for today, but unless I hear an objection, let's start with agenda item A and see where we go from there.
Jan Cameron from the Cultural Resources Office.
Oh, sure.
Shall I let you read that? This is 16 Westmoreland Place. It is a preliminary review application to construct a sunroom on the rear corner of probably one of the finest houses in the city, 16 Westmoreland, and that's that. You can see it's a very large parcel of property. Actually extends all the way to Lindell. And this is the site plan of the property. And the addition is indicated there in the southeast corner of the rear facade. And will be generally in this location. I'm standing directly in front of the house and shooting that way. And this indicates the footprint of the addition. And it's in the gray shaded area. The red line indicates the facade of the actual house. So So it is extending slightly beyond it. The plans that I have show approximately 1.5 feet. I understand that's been revised to no more than 8 inches, but the architect will go into that further in his presentation. That was one of the concerns about the staff, that the staff had, was that it in fact did project slightly beyond the facade. And this is an elevation of the addition. This has changed considerably from the original proposal, which had a much heavier framework, and the glazing has been switched to the exterior of the structure and has considerably lightened up the design. And the rendering. It's a very contemporary design still, but it has more of a feel of a conservatory. A couple of other elevations. Section through. And one of the best things about the addition is that it is removable. It will have a very small impact on the house itself, only in a couple of places, I believe. And so that it will be restorable should it ever come off. This is looking from the east on Westmoreland, and you can see that the area is very heavily wooded with trees here, and this will be the general area of the addition. A little further down, you can see it better. It will start here and go down this way. Sorry. Again, we're just looking at it from the street. So this will not be highly visible from this direction. It'll be about here. But amazingly, when I was out there this afternoon, I realized that across the median, there's a gap, and you can see it quite well. So it'll be in this area. And just a little bit of context to the street. So the staff is recommending approval of the revised proposal. We had originally asked for the condition that it not extend beyond the facade. If it's only 8 inches, I think that the staff would be willing to concede that that would be appropriate. So generally, we're recommending approval without conditions.
Questions for Jan on this side? Questions for Jan on this side?
No, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioners, do you want to hear from the applicant?
Yes.
Yes?
Sure. No.
Not necessary for me, no.
Mr. Killeen?
Here he comes.
No questions.
Okay, stay right there. You have a motion, Mr. Vines.
Yes, I move to grant preliminary approval for the proposed conservatory addition with the condition that it not extend beyond the house's eastern facade, and that final drawings and materials are reviewed and approved by the Cultural Resources Office.
Before that's seconded, would 8 inches be okay?
8 inches is cool,
Okay. Is there
but
a
not
second?
9.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
My turn.
You're done. You're approved.
So we don't need to say anything more?
No.
Just get us in trouble?
Unless you want to object to our approval.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah. I know, they called. Oh, they're late. Okay, Commissioners, we still don't have an approved agenda. Let's do agenda item C, 3001. Seriously? Agenda? MISOSURI.
MISOSURI.
It's a
AVNUE.
Japanese street. What? Look at the agenda.
One second, guys.
Okay.
Get caught up. This is really Missouri Street, I swear. Okay, please. Okay, so this is a prelim for a single-family new construction over in Benton Park. It was the site of that of a marble factory. We saw the demolition a long, long time ago. It kind of sat in the back of the lot back there, and it kind of had this entire little corner. We've seen a few people come through, try to develop the parcels. They've been split up now, and the corner property is with Dan Kammerer, who is here and is going to do this new single-family house. This is the location of the property. Digging, and this one parcel has never been built on before. Pull all the old maps, and this is kind of neat. This is one little area that's never been built on before, so it's kind of neat. Okay, so aerial shot again, catching with a large parcel. It's been split up into several parcels. Dan just had this one. He's also going to rehab the little guy back here, which we're really happy he's going to do. So that the old factory sat right here, and this has always been kind of empty land. Some context in the south. This is kind of a cautionary tale. We look for new construction, we say we want to see houses not have vinyl siding on it. We want to see approved plans. This is what we try to avoid, just for reference. This is all vinyl and exposed lots, so we always want to see these sided and brick. So this is kind of, we try to avoid this in the future. We got burned a few times, so this is kind of our little cautionary tale. But anyway, it's new construction. Rest is historic fabric in the area. This is the opposite corner. This is the little house that's being rehabbed by the developer. It's going to add a little garage back to it. Really cool project. And this is what's being proposed. So here's the site plan. It's going to be a story and a half with an attached garage. There's obviously no alley access, so the alley access will be off the street for the garage, excuse me. Streetscape showing what's going to happen. This is on the Crittenden side, and this is on Missouri.
Hi, Sarah.
Smaller house than we're used to seeing. It's kind of neat to see a little modest house versus a large one. Here's your model. Here's the front elevation. Here's the Crittenden side. Again, we'll have a brick garage. This will be a Hardy or a Hardy addition. They'll attach the two. And this is the south side, which will be all brick because, again, you have a large side yard because of the empty lots. There's the back. In terms of the ordinance, it meets all the requirements. It has a model example, setback is fine. Yeah, the mass is good, the scale is fine. The proportions are correct, construction is fine. The garage issue, again, it can't comply because there is no alley. But beyond that, it meets all of the criteria. We have support from Benton Park. They're fine with it. Staff's worked with them on design to get where we are now, and so we're recommending approval.
Questions for Bob?
I have one.
Bob?
Sure, Mike. Yeah.
So that Hardy, could you go back to the view to the side street there?
You want to see the aerial, or you want to see the?
The drawing, I'll know it when I see it, that one.
Sure, that's the little setback.
Which way are we facing there?
So you're facing south on this part. So that's a connector between the house and the garage. That's set back a little bit. I'll show you back up the side plan. So you're seeing that little connector in the back. So you're seeing is this, way back here, so it kind of L's out. So you're seeing that portion right there.
Oh, so it's back behind that
Correct, right.
fence, so we won't see the Hardy
Right,
from
yeah,
the
it's
street.
back here.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. Okay. Do we want to hear from the applicant? Mr. Clean? Nope. Okay. And there's no one else signed up to speak? Commissioner Bicentennial, have you got a motion?
Yes, I do. I move that the board grant preliminary approval for the new construction with the stipulation that final drawings, materials, and colors be reviewed and approved by local resources.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, let's try to straighten out our agenda. Where's our director? Oh, can't straighten out the agenda yet because there is no director. Let's proceed down our agenda. I'll call 2266 and 2268 Missouri, spelled correctly.
Okay, so this is also on a corner on Missouri, which is in a different historic district. This is in McKinley Heights. Let me grab the permit. One second. Okay, so it's a prelim to construct 2 single-family houses in the McKinley Heights Historic District. So you're looking here at the corner of Missouri and Shenandoah. Here's the site. To the south here, this empty lot that was all recently built out with several new single-family houses. Aerial shot showing what's going on. Historically, there was a huge mixed-use corner commercial that kind of mimicked that guy here. There's a pretty drastic grade change, here, so you can kind of see that later on in the streetscape drawings, because the corner was at grade, and this is a little bit higher up. Here's your site plan. This is right at the sidewalk. Initially, we met with the owners in the neighborhood because these were spaced out differently. They were kind of spaced out evenly on the 2 parcels and leaving a gap at the sidewalk. Met with them in the neighborhood and agreed to push that to the corner to kind of give it a better rhythm on the block and kind of a more appropriate feel to the street. So that was a huge bone of contention that we resolved with the developers. So this is right at the sidewalk, and these are spaced evenly now to kind of give them a better rhythm on the street. And these are the 2 street-facing elevations. This will be the site along Shenandoah, so it'll be all brick, and they added extra windows to kind of look more appropriate. The brick will return equal amounts between the buildings on the north side of each property. And the rear will have Harding and probably painted red to match the brick. And this is the accurate streetscape drawing. You see it steps down dramatically from the one historic building here, and it kind of steps down gradually. This is now accurate. These are the 2 examples they used, and they are both appropriate. The street is a mix of 3-story and 2-story buildings, so building 2-story here is appropriate. And this is the new house street, the new construction they just purchased, just built. Okay, so again, back to the ordinance. Everything complies in terms of setback, mass, scale, the fenestration, the facade material. Everything complies out. We do have support from the neighborhood and the aldermen, both support the project, so put in the record. And we recommend approval. Any questions?
Bob, the 2288 Missouri, can you bring up the elevations again?
Sure.
Neither of the model examples has arched windows down in the basement. They look
Right. Now, you know,
out of
they
place on
based
this
on, they
one.
don't be replicas. They can have some deviation to it. They don't need to be exact replicas. They can have some deviation to it.
Okay. So, if I were to make the motion, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that those be straightened out. I think that would make
Yeah, I
for a
mean,
better
that's fine.
facade.
That's, I mean, I know that.
Save costs too. Expensive to do an arched window.
Sure. I mean, that's, if you want to make that, you can do so.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Bob? Do we have anyone signed up here? Let's see. Is it this one?
Yeah, Missouri.
Mr. Peterson? All right, let's see.
Mike, if you could ask the architect if he has
You're
any,
the
if that'd be an issue.
architect. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Do I have questions? I'm sorry, you're the architect?
Yes.
Oh, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
What would you think about straightening out the windows on 2288 in the basement?
That's fine, we can do that. The ones on the basement on the, yeah.
Yeah, just the basement, yeah, the front facade.
Yep.
So that's the only the question I would have, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you have anything else you'd like to mention to the board?
No, that's fine.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, okay. Watch me try to mumble a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion on this one. When you're ready.
Chairman Vizentainer is actually chairing the meeting at the moment.
Oh, at the moment, yes, sir.
Do we have a motion on this proposal?
I do. I move that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval of the new construction with the stipulation that the windows on 2288, what's the address here, Missouri, at the basement front facade be altered from arch top to flat top windows, and that final drawings and materials be reviewed and approved with the Cultural Resources Office.
2288 or 68?
I've got on mine,
It's 68 is the corner, it's 68.
well, 2288 has the arched windows on this document I have here. Page 25.
It should be 68.
Okay,
It should be 68.
Oh, I see.
okay. So amended.
Seconded yet.
No, so have you amended that motion?
Yes, it would be amended to, although on page 25 it does show arch tops on 2288. I suppose it's, per Bob's testimony, it's 2268 that has the arch tops.
Okay. So
Is that right?
I think it's 66 and 68, right?
88 has the, or 68 has the arch windows on it.
Well, only one of the buildings has an arch window in the basement. So the one with the arch window, we're requesting that that be altered to straight.
Okay, so
In
we
the,
have- we have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay. We still do not have a approved agenda, so I'm going to call 1900 Lafayette.
We're outside. We get them for you?
Yes, please.
One second.
Yes. Wait, before you do, Bob?
Yep.
Is special agenda items, Henker Bolivar Historic District present?
I am, yep.
Okay.
Alrighty.
We'll pass over the staff and let you do the presentation.
Okay. I am Nancy Homan. I'm the chair of the Skinker to Bolivar Historic District Committee. I have been the chair of the committee for going on 10 years now. In 2015, we began the process of revising our historic district ordinance to update it, to bring it in line with modern construction techniques, and to make it more applicable to the Preservation Board. And we were running into some issues with projects in the neighborhood that were being allowed through because our ordinance did not address those specific issues. We went through a period of public comment within the neighborhood, and the document that I believe you have before you is the result of that, with the cooperation of Cultural Resources, particularly Jan Cameron, who was instrumental in assisting us with this. Betsy Bradley, when she was still with the Cultural Resources, also kind of got us started on it. So we're now at the point where we're ready to continue the process to go forward. So I am not sure what the next process is, because Dan was going to speak to that. So I believe it just needs to have your approval so that we can continue on the process of having it approved by the Board of Aldermen and made into an ordinance.
Are you happy with it?
We are very happy with it.
Are your neighbors happy with it?
You know, there's always people who aren't happy.
Yeah.
But we believe that we have done our due diligence in the neighborhood to ensure that everyone's concerns have been heard and they have been addressed, and we have a document that will be appropriate for the majority of the neighborhood. There's always going to be issues that we're going to run into, but we believe that this is the best solution that we have been able to come up with.
Will the elected representatives from wards 26 and 28 both handle the ordinance?
Yes,
Both are fine with this?
yes. They have both approved, they have, I believe, both been copied on everything and have given their approval to the ordinance.
Great.
Dan, what would you like us to do?
I would like you all to give a positive recommendation to send this to the Planning Commission for their review, and upon that, and the Board of Public Service, and upon that, it can be prepared as a board bill.
Is that the recommendation on page 50 of the agenda?
I don't know my page numbers, but yes.
Ms. Hamilton, have you got a motion?
The motion is that the Preservation Board should direct the staff to prepare a report that recommends to the Planning Commission and Board of Aldermen the adoption of the revised Skinker Developer Historic District standards.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know this process is...
I've got the gray hair to prove it.
Okay, good. Commissioners?
Actually vote yet?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. Aye.
All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor, that's been made and seconded, signify by saying aye. Again.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Sure. We did. Okay,
2 is here, or B is here now. Do you want to get the?
let's try to get our agenda settled first. Where did the director go this time? Okay, we still do not have a formal agenda. However, I will call 1001, 1003 Russell Boulevard.
So undoing.
Yes, first.
Oh, I apologize.
No,
I'm new to the process. I do
you can
have
either
handouts.
stay right there, or you can go back and sit down. Your choice.
Just give me a second.
I'll stand here.
Excellent. No pressure, Jan.
Okay.
I sort of like the notion, you're late, so you have to stand.
Oh, man.
Well,
I deserve that.
756 texts from Dave Sweeney. They're coming. They're close. They're not far away. They're in the stairway.
Would you like the handouts? Okay.
Hang on. Here we are. This is the preliminary review application, and some of you may recognize it because it was at the board several months ago. The staff is recommending approval, subject to the usual exterior review, or review of exterior materials and final drawings by the staff. However, the board put an additional condition on that. So while this is not a formal appeal, this is a second reconsideration that the developer has asked for, and he will explain why he's done that. But this is the site. It's on Russell in the Soulard Historic District. It's a very odd site because most of the block has been rebuilt later, as you can see. That's the site. The proposal is for a 3-story mixed-use building. It'll be commercial on the first floor and residential above, with parking at the rear. And that's the proposal. The sticking point was the side elevations. Both of them will be somewhat visible. One because there's an alley on the west side, and on the east side there is a 1-story building that's set further back. Now the initial application showed the brick, as you see here, halfway back, which seemed to be a logical breaking point, so that one could view the attachment, the rear of the facade as an attachment, and it would be sided in a similar color, hardy board, similar color to the brick. The condition that the board placed on it, here we go, was to have brick fully on both secondary elevations. A little bit of context, that's the site. Again, it's very unusual for Soulard. Much later buildings on the west end, the east end, I'm sorry. So, the staff is again recommending, as we did the first time, that it be approved as the developer is proposing, where half the side elevations will be brick. And I will leave it to him to explain why it's not, doesn't seem to be feasible for him to do fully brick side elevations. Questions?
Questions on this side? Welcome, Commissioner Robinson.
Well, thank you.
You have any questions? You have an alibi?
Not
It's okay,
at this
Commissioner
time.
Killeen was also a little late.
Not very. Well,
Questions on this side?
My only question, what was there before?
Right now, it's a parking lot.
Was it, had it been, what, do you know what was there prior to that?
I don't know. I didn't really do research on it, but you can see these buildings are much later. This is a 30s building there with a gambrel roof, and that's a little utility building that will be actually directly next to the new building. And then there's a couple of 60s ranchettes at the back. And those are all set considerably back from the building line. This building will be at the building line of the rest of the block, which looks like that.
Has there been any neighborhood input?
The neighborhood is, I believe you have something from,
I have a letter of support from the neighborhood and from the alderperson. So let me, with the updated rendering, is it okay right now to pass everything out?
Are you finished, Jane?
yeah.
We're finished?
I apologize, I'm a novice at
Goes
this.
to Adana down there on the very end.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
I'll let you pass that out.
Okay.
We'll have some brick questions for you in just a minute.
Hopefully, I can do a good job at answering all the questions of the committee.
He hasn't been introduced yet. I don't know.
Okay, everybody ready? Okay, tell us who you are.
My name is Charles Closser. I am the Closser and Simpson Closser, the development group. Unfortunately, my partner could not be here today as he's out of town with family. So my background is in architecture and urban planning. My partner is money behind the vision. So that's kind of who we are. We wanted to bring a project that was going to be very positive for the neighborhood. So for us, we didn't want to just do something that was going to be all about residential. We wanted to have a commercial component to it, something that could liven the street a little bit. And it's been a little bit of a process to get here, but I feel like we put together a pretty good product for the neighborhood.
So, tell us about the brick return.
So, working with the neighborhood and looking at the ordinances and everything else, we feel like we've come up with a very reasonable compromise to the requirements. Not a compromise per se, because if you look at the ordinances, it's kind of, does it go all the way back? Does it go back 5 feet? And what we're saying is we're going to go back 35 feet on both sides. If you look at your handouts, on the east side of the building, that basically is the break point where the garage is. So that's a very natural point of the brick breaking. And then on the opposite side, I call it the alley, but it's really a private drive owned by the neighboring property. It's really at the staircase, if you will, as our natural break point. And what we wanted to do was kind of generate something that almost looked like a chimney on a historical building. So working with the neighborhood, we thought it was important that even though you could see this from the side, we would extend the cornice around the bend, have something that was proportionately correct for the neighborhood, and really sort of allowed the siding to go away, if you will. From a financial point of view, I don't really know like where I'm supposed to go with all this, so I apologize. I'm a little nervous. This is one of my first things. So from a financial considerations, what we were looking at initially was the idea of going all the way back. And obviously, new construction costs more than rehab. You don't have the same tax incentives that you do with rehab. So we initially started out with a lot more lobby space, a lot more amenities, and then we scaled those back. And in my opinion, we're sort of at the point where we have to make a decision between, do we have barbecue pits and a lobby or a little bit of extra brick? And I don't mean to put things like that bluntly or anything like that, but
We like barbecue.
I know, and I do too, and I love having a good product, and I feel like where we're at with the process of everything, working with the neighborhood, and they've been great, by the way. We've met with them several times. I feel like we've come up with something that kind of gives everybody a lot of bang for their buck, where it allows my team to give the residents that are going to live there some amenities without completely depending upon 100% the Soulard experience. And now what it comes down to is the brick. I mean, and I love brick as much as everyone else. I mean, I know the group is very familiar with the cost of brick. I'm very familiar with the cost of brick, and at a certain point, we just have to know that everybody's busy right now in terms of the contractors, so prices are up. Fortunately, the market sort of takes over, and that's kind of where we're at. And hopefully, the board understands sort of our position on everything.
Okay, let's see, Commissioner Robinson, you're a brick agnostic. What do you think?
One story. So essentially what it looks like is you're taking the brick back to the one-story building to the right.
Correct. It's symmetrical.
Yeah. And then, yeah, got it. Private drive, got it. Yeah. And explain again your reasoning.
Well, I think the ordinances, first of all, are a little bit gray in the sense that whether or not they allow a minor return or a logical return or all the way down. I think based upon that, we could make a good argument. However, considering the amount of money that it costs for new construction versus rehab without tax, state and federal tax credits, I think we have to be a little bit sensitive to the ideal that at some point we either have to choose bricks or amenities. So I'm not opposed to putting the brick up, but I won't have any, I will be reduced to almost no lobby, no outdoor amenity area, because I have to pay for the brick one way or another. It's just, unfortunately, I don't live in the world of pro formas. That the bank makes me live by it. There's also a rule when we were working with the neighborhood. I forgot what he called it. It explained in the letter. There's like a 25-foot wide alley, or that's kind of setback where, you know, the way they used to do it is if you have a 25-foot side yard, 30-foot side yard, go back that amount, and they consider that a reasonable amount of return. And we were exceeding that. And I think when you start thinking about the whole thing and your approach as you go east down Russell, if you're in a car, you'll experience this brick for maybe 2 seconds. If you're walking, I'm not even sure you'll, outside of, unless you're walking up the alley, you'll really experience it fully. And it's not like we're going to put vinyl siding on the side of the building. We are going to use quality materials. We are going to use hardy board. And our goal is to have it disappear.
And what? Got it.
Am I allowed to elaborate on this a little bit? I want to elaborate on the process just a little bit.
Sure.
Initially, when we bought the lot, we were thinking 5 stories, which we thought would be a toss-up, and that's really where our pro forma wanted to be from a developing perspective in terms of ROI and all that other good stuff, right? Unfortunately, we're in a historical district, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, like, we knew what we were getting into buying the lot, but we were very excited about the neighborhood. So working with Jan, the neighborhood, Jay Gibbs, and everybody else, we have elected to scale the project back. Up the street where they're doing 140 units, it's easy to spread this cost over units. We are at 16 apartments, so $100,000 for brick over 16 units is very significant compared to if we had, let's say, 140 units and our cost was $500,000 extra for brick. So I'll quit beating a dead horse, if you will.
Can someone at staff explain exactly what Soulard requires on new construction?
They allow what he's proposing.
I'm okay with it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Killeen?
Do you have approval from your alderman and from the neighborhood association? I don't know if I saw
Yes,
that.
you'll see the letter, the email from Jack Kotar, and then the letter, which is attached right on front
Oh, right.
from Soulard Group. And basically, Jack says, I'm supporting whatever the neighborhood is supporting, and whatever recommendations they make, I'm okay with.
Okay.
So we've been working closely with the neighborhood.
So I see that on the west side, you're doing this this mock elevator thing, or the elevator's trying to be a chimney. Are you doing anything on the east side to break the brick from the siding?
No, there's a garage right there, and it's on top of a hill. So from your elevation, where you start on the sidewalk, so the top of the garage, I believe it's approximately, now I'm going off memory, so don't quote me here, but I believe it's approximately 16 feet.
That's something you could do for us, though?
If you look at the elevations.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So some kind of a break there, is that possible to add to your design?
Right, so if you look at page 2, that's where we're doing, you mean in terms of a chimney?
Maybe you step the siding portion back, half a foot or something, just so there's a break. It's not brick up against siding in the same plane, where it's clearly, you look at that and say, that's where the developer ran out of money. But if it's set back a half a foot, it could give the feeling like, oh, that's an addition that went on later.
I do have a response to that. We would do that. The problem is that building does not have a footing. So initially, we were going to go directly to the property line, but now we're forced to run extra shoring and everything else, which means we're kind of shrinking the building as much as we can. Our master bedrooms are approximately 10 foot 10 across, and I'm not sure that we can take any more out of that. Especially when you have a garage and you're on that side of the street and you're looking in perspective. I'm not really sure that you're going to perceive that as being a negative break or not being an addition, if that makes sense.
Oh, I've seen enough of these, yeah, I think you will. So when you say the building doesn't have a foundation, you're not talking about your building, I assume?
No,
It's the
no, I'm
one-story?
talking about the garage.
Okay,
And
all right,
I know that because I personally dug it out myself.
okay. No further questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we would, running framing all the way back, and you've got an airspace with brick and everything, there'd actually be about a 5-inch return there where the siding comes up and meets the brick, though.
Do you mean on the east side or on the west side?
Well, on the, let's see, so this would be east side, the one next to the garage.
So what we're,
That should be the case in all cases.
yeah. The brick has a natural thickness that's wider than the siding.
3 5/8 plus the airspace. So you should naturally have
Correct.
4.5, 5 inches.
And I can tell you on
there anyway.
the opposite side, on the west side where we're showing a chimney, if you will, I fought tooth and nail with the architect on this to have some sort of natural return, because what we're running into is ADA and other things, because with the slope of the site and trying to create a new building and modern code and not having to do something odd like a wheelchair lift or something like that, we ran into all sorts of fun challenges. I've learned a lot from this building in particular. So giving it there, it was kind of the choice of not doing anything or giving it on one side, the more prominent side, in my opinion. And me as an architect, I wanted to have some sort of break. I mean, I'm on the same page, we're on the same team. And it's kind of like, which side do you sort of, you got to pick your battles. Which side do you sort of choose, you know? And
You will have a break there.
yeah.
There will be.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In the garage, kind of, it sort of worked out that the garage and the stairs sort of all kind of broke on the same plane, but it was sort of a nice coincidence, if you will. So we feel like it's going to be good, and most people, when they're walking up the street or driving up the street, really won't perceive the break.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you have questions? No. Commissioner Byzantiner, do you have questions? Commissioner Vines, do you have questions?
Not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Killeen, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I move that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval for the proposed new construction with the condition that exterior details and materials are reviewed and approved by the Cultural Resources Office staff.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Thank you, Commissioners. There's a motion on the floor. It's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Commissioners, take a look at your agenda for a second. We have heard so far agenda items A, B, C, D, and the special agenda item. Agenda item G needs to be retitled as an appeal of the director's decision. And I think that's it. Do I hear a motion to accept this as an agenda?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it.
Somebody turn you down.
Yes.
Mr. Byzantiner was opposed.
He's a troublemaker.
The council will explain to you later. Okay, next up, we're going to hear some of 215 York Avenue. This will be a split presentation in which, at this meeting, we will hear from those proposing the project, and at the next meeting, we will take public testimony.
Chairman, I believe that's still under negotiation.
It was settled a minute ago.
Oh, what? Okay. It's just that they're not here.
Well, we'll start. Yeah.
sorry, I'll get to it. Okay. This is an exciting proposal for a new hotel to be constructed at 215 York Avenue, which is in the Central West End Historic District. This is the site. It is mostly a parking lot, but it also contains the building that you see in the center of the screen. And that is the site. And that's the footprint of the proposed building. So it follows the building line along York, and it pretty much fills the property. There will be parking underneath and behind, so they are using the existing curb cut, which you'll see in a second. So there will not be a new curb cut required for this. This is the elevation that faces York. And, excuse me. Walked off with my pointer. Okay, so this, in green? Well, anyway, you can see that there's a white rectangle to the right of the first story. That will be the entry to the parking. And these are the side elevations. Now, this will be directly abutting the York building. You'll also see in a minute. This is the rear elevation that'll face west and really won't be visible except from an alley. And a rendering of the streetscape along York. We're looking southwest here, and the York building is the red brick building at the end. So the black and the white is the proposed hotel. Across the street is the parking garage for the library. And then on the far right corner is the end of the Maryland Plaza buildings. This is a shot of the front facade from that parking garage. And this is the rear elevation. This is a photograph that was sent to us to indicate the appearance of the white material. Now, go back to the facade. The dark brown color is actually a brick. And I do have some samples here that I'll pass out to the board in a second. But the white here will be a stucco board. Okay? And there is a sample of that also. The staff is concerned in reviewing this that we like the design of the building, but we feel that maybe some more brick would bring it more into the character of the historic district. The standards for the district allow some flexibility on materials, but stucco is not a predominant material in the district, which is primarily brick and terracotta. And so this building will be demolished. It's the old station building. It was actually built in 1959 as a warehouse and then had certain renovations done to it. This is a non-contributing building in the historic district, which means that its demolition is inconsequential as far as the district is concerned. It's another shot of it. Again, what you're seeing in the background is York building, and this is the parking area currently where the majority of the hotel will be. Another shot of that parking area, and you can see the existing curb cut in the slide on the right. This is the context on the south from Maryland. This is the library parking garage, which will be directly opposite. And this is from York, we're going northwards. This is a connector building between the two here at the south end, and the context on Lindell, and the context from Maryland. So the staff is recommending preliminary approval be granted with the condition that the exterior materials for the front facade be reconsidered, and that staff would review and approve.
Commissioners, further developments along York. May I hear a motion to defer this until the next meeting.
I just had a quick question. What's the purpose of moving it? Why the opposition comments at another meeting? I'm just curious. Is there just a lot of people signed up to speak?
That's a good question. Discussion between the neighborhood groups and the developer have not yet happened.
Oh,
According to all sources, it's nobody's fault, it just did not happen. The alderwoman asked that we defer a decision until the neighbors had had a chance to register their opinions. There have been calls to the neighborhood groups going on for the last 50 minutes. They were unsuccessful in getting opinions, and the developer has now asked, rather than a split meeting, that we hear everything all at once at the next meeting, which is scheduled for Christmas Day. But we'll deal with that problem at a later time.
I won't be here.
So, can I have a motion to defer this until the next meeting?
I move that the board defer action on this agenda item until the next meeting.
Second.
So we will consider your presentation having been made. Okay. But we will defer any further action on it until the next meeting, assuming that all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We will take that up again next meeting. Thank you all for your patience. Let's do, you know what? Let's do 1900 Lafayette.
Okay, our final preliminary review of the night.
By the way, the lesson from this is, for developers, talk to the neighborhood groups in a timely fashion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Our final preliminary review for the night is another interesting project. This is the Lafayette School in the Lafayette Historic District. This is a one-story school, as you can see, obviously. And the proposal is to construct 2 stories on top of this building. They are going to increase the number of classes that they will be able to provide services for. This is the site. You can see it's catty corner from Lafayette Park. And it actually has 3 street fronts: Missouri, Lafayette, and Preston Place. So let's go back. And right now that I've got a working pointer, this is the 1-story. This is a 2-story school, and this is currently a parking area / playground. This is a church which is not part of this project, but is integrated into the site. There is a parking area, which you'll see in my slides here, that I believe both the school and the church share. And the proposal is for a new 2-story multipurpose room here and a 2-story classroom here that'll fill that parking space. Again, the curb cuts are existing. And this is the site, a rendering of the proposed new building to be constructed adjacent to the church. So you can see the part of the 1-story is retained here, and then there's a larger mass being constructed here. There's also a new building being constructed at Mississippi. Another shot of the new building. This is the Preston Place facade. I will point out one of the concerns which may be addressed when the designer does his presentation is that this area here, I think, is a screen for mechanical units, and that's a concern because while this is a dead-end street, this is still Preston Place and a street elevation. And these are the buildings, well, it's actually one building, to be constructed on Mississippi. I'll do these briefly because you may hear from the architect on these, but this is the context of the street. So scale-wise, it's good. Material-wise, it's good. Many revisions have been made to the original proposal in response to both our requests and the requests of the Lafayette Square Development Committee. We still have another concern on this one, which is this very large stair that will be providing access to the 2nd story. This is the Mississippi elevation. Again, this is the new construction right here. This is an existing, which I think was the rectory building for the church. And this is a shot from Mississippi and Lafayette. This is the site on Mississippi. And the context south on Mississippi. And that's the site too on the left. And the opposite Mississippi streetscape with the parking area that is at Lafayette. And this is the back part of the one story where there will be 2 stories constructed on top of it on Preston. Another shot. And this is the context along Preston. This is the 2-story building here. So you can see that some of the details of the design of the Mississippi addition to this building were taken from this building. And that's the very beautiful Second Empire at the opposite corner at Lafayette and Preston streetscape, and here's a detail of the 2-story school. And just some more context shots of the existing conditions and the context along Lafayette. Okay. So aside from we would still like to see some consideration to the stair on Mississippi and to that area on the Preston Place facade, but other than that, the staff is recommending that the board grant preliminary approval subject to the usual conditions of staff review of exterior materials and final drawings.
Was it your testimony that you wanted to see that stairway replaced with a city museum style climber?
I don't believe I said that.
Okay. Questions on this end?
No, sir.
Questions on this end?
Okay, I do need to submit a letter from the Lafayette Square Development Committee, but they have 2 representatives here to testify.
Okay. Let's start with the applicant.
Some handouts, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to
Can you
present.
move to Adana, please?
Sorry, I'll just give a brief summary of the project while those are coming through. We renovated we renovated 2 phases of this building about 2 years ago for Lafayette Preparatory Academy. Those currently hold their kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms. The school is chartered to go through 8th grade, and they actually have 6th and 7th graders now. This addition is to give them the additional classrooms to have full kindergarten through 8th grade education plus a gymnasium. The way we're accomplishing that is the building on the front, on the Lafayette elevation, was built in the 1950s, and fortunate for us, was built to bear 2 more stories. So the footings are adequate. We're doing some gymnastics that hopefully you won't see to make the lateral bracing work out, but we're adding a gymnasium addition above the 1950s portion on Lafayette Avenue. So that's the large volume you see in some of the images. On Mississippi, on a parking lot, we're basically extending a 1960s building. So which is low floor to ceilings and at grade, so not elevated. And we're extending that out to Lafayette and then trying to bridge that with the sort of rectory building of the church itself. So all in, from a designer's perspective, what we're trying to do is reconcile a existing campus with 1880s architecture, 1950s, 1960s architecture, trying to bring those into a cohesive whole, and then also work within the design guidelines of the neighborhood. So this is one of the most challenging things we've worked with in the office. We've tried to blend all those things, and to do that, there isn't a requirement for a model example, so we are addressing in these slides the individual requirements of the design guidelines for the neighborhood. The different facts of these, and I won't go into detail, but I'm happy to answer a question. The Mississippi elevation is changed in the packet that you have to include a little bit more stonework around the entryway and a little bit more coping. I was just talking to Suzanne about potentially adding some more banding, and we're amenable to do that. And then I have the last slide in the deck is a supplementary slide on the staircase, just to add some clarity of what we were trying to do. Some of the comments that they look like a fire escape, and without putting words in anybody's mouth, I wanted to just clarify that the base of that stair is brick with stone treads, and then the rail is an ornamental iron piece, which we're trying to push a little bit of an eclectic aesthetic with, going up that bypasses the brick partially. So hopefully that last slide clarifies in a little bit more detail at least what our intent is, so hopefully that helps with understanding. So I'm happy to talk in more detail about anything, but maybe just ask for questions.
Commissioners, questions on this side?
I will say I don't envy you. This is an impossible task.
Commissioner Hamilton?
I assume you've seen the letter from the Lafayette Square Restoration Committee.
Correct.
Can you just give us an idea, what would be prohibitive about what they've requested that would alter your plans?
Well, I think on the relative to the Mississippi elevation, we've already made some of the changes. We misinterpreted one, to be honest with you, about a band on the gable end of that building, and I think we can work with them to create something there. There are some points, if I understand them correctly, about doing a limestone frame around the Lafayette elevation. And we would argue, we're adding to a building that doesn't have limestone frames.
To make this a coherent discussion?
Yes.
Do you want to say what you want to do?
You want him to finish first?
Nope.
What, the question?
No, stand right over there. This is like a reality TV show now. I have wanted to do this. Who are you?
I'm Suzanne Sessions, 1831 Kenneth Place, Lafayette Square,
Representing?
representing the Lafayette Square Development Corporation.
And your question, Mr. Vines, was?
Committee.
Well, it was really, I guess, for the developer. I was going to just say it would seem.
Have you seen their concerns?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so what are your concerns?
The concerns until I saw it today were the fact that the staircase on the Lafayette side is still awkward and does not seem to tie into the building as a design of the time, and that would be 1950s, 60s. We're talking, let me stop right here and say, this is a toughie. It's a terrible, terrible job that they have taken on and done very well, we feel. But the fact is, they can't design something more modern than the time it was built, or older and more traditional than that. That's the way our code is written right there. And so what they're doing, they're trying to straddle quite well that existing building that was done in the 50s, for the school there, and trying to use pieces of that as they go around. When we first met, we asked that they create more of a continuity with the stonework between the new buildings and the old buildings, but never make it corbelled and crenellated, because that's a different style from a different time. But there's a pattern, as you go along, as you can see, between all the white framing and the details. We asked to see more of that, and they did that. And they changed the large window that was in the front quite nicely, and that was fine. So we are really now at very detailed things, and one of them, and I haven't looked to see what you have today, about the Preston side, about removing the screen and getting a little bit more detail. Did you get that in here? Because I didn't.
We haven't had time to address that,
Okay.
that item.
All right. The three items we still asking for was to remove from that Preston Avenue side, the rear equipment screen that sits right on the top of the building on the Preston side, move it to the alley side, get rid of that on that side. Give us a little bit more detail on the stonework on that side of the building. Right now, it's very, very plain, just a little bit in that. And then the big concern still is to us, the stairway, how it ties into that design of that building. And the third one, I think they've just about handled very nicely, and that is on the Mississippi side. We asked, they got more of the stone trim in, and they've done that. We still like to see something happen on the roof, and I think they'll do that. So those are our concerns. They're wonderful to work with and to have solved our problems. I will give you really applaud for this, because it's true. This is a stinker of a job to do, to try to take and put, a three-story addition onto this when you're surrounded by this wonderful old church on one side of 1880, and you've got the other side, this wonderful set of buildings on historical buildings from the 1880s on the Lafayette side. And so, but that's what they have to do. And so they're doing it very well. And the big stink is still the staircase, the grill, and a little bit more trim on the Mississippi side.
Excellent presentation, Mr. Crittenden. Go back. Mr. Vines, your question.
I guess, more for the restoration or the development corporation, do you have an example of
Ever played T-ball?
I'm not very well.
I'm not going to
But-
keep putting these things on a tee.
Yeah,
for you if you
I
don't
guess,
hit them.
I don't know how formal, I'm just curious if there's an example for the stairwell concern that would be suitable for this kind of development.
We didn't address that. We just looked at what they had at this point, and we felt that it was awkward still, and it just doesn't fit in, to the.
Is it
I
the
know what they're-
railing?
And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a statement there with a staircase, because there's a big blank brick wall behind that. But it's looking like a fire escape on the front of the building to us still, and that's our objection to it. But no, I have not gone back to find an example of a staircase. It has to be an exterior staircase, as I understand it, and going from the base upstairs to the second floor. But we feel that that's really the most difficult thing that's still not resolved. But we didn't find one that we would do differently.
Just out of curiosity, just so I understand, is it more the railing, the aesthetics of the railing, or is it the actual function?
I think it's the combination of the angles of the railing, that's going up on an angle.
Mhm.
That. And it because of the fact you've got very traditional square, rectangular shapes, and when you break it like that, and it's the only place that is broken like that, it stands out as I will say this word, you're a nice person, as an architectural conceit, as we used to say. So that's my concern about it. And it's not the fact that they have to have it there, but we'd like to see more mass or something so it becomes part of the building and doesn't feel like it's just a safety staircase in the front of the building, which it's not supposed to be. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I guess, can I follow-up question for Mr. Crittenden? Given that testimony or that request, what do you foresee as being problematic with maybe looking into alternatives for that?
We, at the end of the day, we want to get the project done. I think it's license on our design and what we think will look good. It's tough to do something you can't point to as an explicit example like this. But as a designer, the 1950s building is very mundane. I mean, it wouldn't even really qualify as modern movement. It's probably closest line architecturally to armories, Second World War II and in-war armories in Missouri, brick armories, and so it's pretty pared down aesthetics with small openings relative to massing. And really with that, we were just trying to add a little bit of something different, and there's not great precedent for, 1950s architecture or even modern architecture in St. Louis. There's good, but there's not a wealth of it as there are in other places. So I think that there is a precedent from architecture at that time to have a little bit more eclectic nature to it, or eclectic elements that would be the differentiator in terms of how you set up a massing of an element, so that there is that slight eclectic or out of place element that sort of makes the composition work. And to me as a designer, I just kind of taking that line and eccentrically running it at a different angle than the stair at the top of the top of the rail brought that whole larger mass down, where we're trying to handle a lot of the shear that we need to accomplish in the building down into the ground in an elegant way. I mean, that's where I'm coming from as a designer. I don't think we're going to walk away from the project, certainly, over this, but
Did you look at the before and after?
we're coming from.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
proposed? I think the addendum is moving in the right direction.
It seems to me, yeah, some due diligence was done to consider some of the concerns. I mean, you've answered my question.
Other questions? Thank you. Why is everybody on that side of the table leaning away from me? Commissioner Vizentainer, this requires a motion from an engineer, I think. The staff recommendation is on page 35 of your agenda.
And
And
40.
Yep.
I'm going to move that the board grant preliminary approval to the proposed design with the stipulation that screen location on the Preston Avenue side be relocated to be less visible, and with the stipulation that the stair rail location configuration be reevaluated and approved by staff, and that exterior materials be approved by Cultural Resources.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Commissioner, is the point of your motion to suggest to staff that you could ultimately live with the redesigned stairwell? Or that you couldn't possibly live with it, and that they should work with both parties to get something different than either as initially proposed or as revised?
I would like for them to work with both parties to come up with an even better and more appropriate solution.
Which would take the form of possibly what?
Alternative materials or alternative location. It could be a number of different avenues, I think.
Commissioner Vines? If this were a T-shirt, would you say this is a good design, not a good design?
To me, just talking out my feelings,
Yeah.
I do not see anything about this that is glaringly objectionable. It looks fine to me given the context, given the nature of the project and the merger of several different eras of architecture all in one. I believe that I guess the goal is to have a functional stairwell. We of course want it to look as nice as possible. I definitely understand the need for certain aesthetic improvements and adjustments, and I feel like that has been considered and implemented to some degree. I don't know if there's any way to ultimately please everybody 100%. I trust that this developer knows what they're doing. If it were something really, offensive, I would say so. I see nothing that I would lose sleep about this.
What about you?
I don't like the wrought iron. It just, knowing where that sits in comparison to the surrounding homes and buildings, it kind of stands out to
You
me.
like a different material
Yes.
or a different location for a staircase with water?
I could deal with a different material. I don't know what that is, but.
Commissioner Killeen?
Well, concerning the motion, I think it's a little vague.
Which is why we're trying to flesh it out now with comments.
Right, so difficult for the architect to know what to do and for the staff to know how to, get in the mix there. I think I was considering such an idea too, get them to work together, but my motion, if I had wanted to do that, would have been, hey, let's defer it a month, let you guys work it out, we'll see you in a month. But the architect, you can see, has done a lot of work to try to solve this impossible puzzle, and I think the staircase is just his signature. So I respect that. A lot of thought went into that too, so I would be fine letting it stand. So I think we either grant the architect the vision that he's put forward with this space, maybe do some better screening of the HVAC equipment, maybe some of this trim that the neighborhood's asking for, or we defer it and allow the neighborhood to have a bigger influence on this design, which...
Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, had I made the motion, I would have been okay with the stair. I personally think it works well, and it is required. I've sat and thought about what other materials it could be, but honestly, I think what I see with the wrought iron and how they're working it with the brick, I am completely okay with that. So my only point would have been for the additional screen or change in screening.
Commissioners, if this motion passes,
It's not been seconded yet.
oh,
I second it.
Tiffany did second it. If this motion passes, I understand that we will send the developer, the neighborhood, back to staff to try to work something out in 3 areas. If it fails, a different motion could be made that would remove the stairs from the motion. With that noted, I will call a roll. Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vizentainer, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, to break the tie, do you vote yes
Oh.
or no?
I'm going to have to say no.
Okay, the motion fails. Commissioner Vizentainer, do you have a second motion?
No, I don't.
Okay, Commissioner Killeen, Commissioner Robinson, have you got a motion?
Yes. I move that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval to the proposed design with the stipulation that the screen location be reconsidered and final plans and exterior materials are reviewed and approved by Cultural Resources Office.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none.
So this has no reference to this handrail?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Vizentainer, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
To break the tie, Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
The ayes have it, the motion carries. We take a 5-minute break. We will shortly reconvene as Administrative Law Board. Before we do, we have one bit of business to complete on our preliminary reviews. Alderwoman Navarro, are you still here?
Thank you very much for your time. I just want to address the board quickly about this, the 215 York Avenue project, which is a very exciting project, and we're not going to hear about it tonight. There's just some more things that need to be done on our end before we come to you. But I would really like to ask your generosity in considering your next meeting, because this project, we would like to get it moving, and we just have a few things we need to do. And I know it's December, and you probably don't usually meet in December, but if it's possible for the board to consider meeting sooner than the fourth Monday in January, that would be very helpful to all of us in order to keep this project moving forward.
Well, we will definitely have a December meeting. We're bound by ordinance to have a monthly meeting. Sometimes the December meetings are a little light on business. But Commissioner Vines and I have agreed to meet on Christmas Day, which is the scheduled meeting. But at the end of this meeting, we'll try to pick a better date.
Okay, wonderful. I'd be happy to bring roasted chestnuts or whatever it would be. But yes, thank you very much. I very much appreciate your consideration to meeting to review this
I've been
project.
expecting coal from you. This is a huge improvement.
I'll see what I can do. Well, thank you for any consideration you can give to this request. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Commissioners, we're going to reconvene now as Administrative Board. Let's determine who's here. Commissioner Robinson, are you here?
I believe so.
Commissioner Kalina, are you here?
Present.
Commissioner Vicentina, are you here?
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton, are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, those are the commissioners present. That is a quorum. As an administrative hearing, we will ask all people who present to us to tell us that they're going to tell us the truth and to identify themselves fully for our record, because we are in fact building one. First up, this is an appeal of a director's denial based upon a denial of an addendum to new construction at 1930 Virginia.
I'm Andrea Gagan with Cultural Resources Office, and I swear to tell the truth. I need to enter into the record enabling ordinance 64689 as amended by 64925 and ordinance 57702, which is the Compton Hill Historic District ordinance, and also the agenda and PowerPoint. You may remember this as it did go before the board in May. As you can see, the building has been partially constructed. This is the location on Virginia, just north of Russell. This is the approved front elevation, and this was the approved side elevations, which it was a mirror image sides that were approved. And this is the proposed side elevation, which is showing a 10-foot return of the brick, and the remainder the cement board. These are some views of the new construction from the street. The first one's from the north side, and the other is the south side. And just some views a bit further down the street from the north and the south. Okay, basically, the board asked that the sides of this new construction be brick. The south side is especially visible, but as you can see from that, you will be able to see both sides. And the applicant came in for an addendum to the approved permit, which did have two sides of full brick, as the board had required. And that he is wanting to revise that to only have a 10-foot return on each side. Letters. There's a letter from the neighborhood group supporting the director's denial of the addendum. The alderman also actually supporting the neighborhood's stance against it. And then this is a letter and some photographs sent in by the homeowner to the north, on the north side of the project, who is also opposed to them doing the 10-foot returns. The Compton Hill Historic District standards say materials for new and rehabilitated structures shall be compatible in type, texture, and color with the original building material. If the building is new, the material should be compatible in type, texture, and color with the predominant original building materials used in the neighborhood. The board viewed that to mean that they should have brick on both sides. Here, and then yes, we are asking that the board uphold the director's denial. Any questions?
What all did you introduce?
Everything.
Okay.
Presentation.
Questions for staff?
So he's proposing this for both sides, he wants to pull it back?
Yes.
And he's just a money thing?
Yeah, I'm assuming
Okay.
he can address that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, let's hear from the appellant.
Appellant, I'm from the neighborhood.
What?
I'm from the neighborhood.
Okay, I need the appellant.
All right.
Hello. Orlando Hoskins, and I just wanted to say hello to everyone. Right hand up.
Truth?
I will tell the truth.
Okay, you're building a record now, so any documents that you want introduced to the record, give to Adana.
Okay.
Your testimony will be recorded and transcribed.
Sure.
It's also on television.
Okay.
And if you brought anybody with you and you'd like them to speak in a certain order, that's up to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Proceed.
Just wanted to present a couple pictures, if I could.
Okay.
And a invoice. So, what we are proposing is, at this point, I think I got some information when we had the plans originally approved, was some third-party information, and I was under the impression that the only way we would be able to construct this structure was if we fully bricked the entire building. So that was sort of third-hand information that I received, and then once we got the approval and digging a little deeper into it, I realized that in fact the neighborhood and the historic guidelines do not require brick to be on the north and south side of the building, and that in fact hardy board is a provable material that we can use. So we think that the modification that we're requesting for materials is reasonable. Some of the purposes for it also is we won't hang our hat on financial issues, but it's about a $52,000 adjustment for going north and side as opposed to going with the hardy board. So those are the things that we wanted you guys to consider. We believe that it's clear that it's not required with the neighborhood, nor is it required with historic guidelines. So that's why we thought we'd come back and request that it be reconsidered. And that's it.
Questions on this side? Questions on this side?
In the neighborhood also, the photos that I submitted, I tried to, there's not a lot of new construction in Compton Heights, but there are quite a bit of additions that would be, I guess, somewhat new construction. The closest one that I think we found was on Milton, and I believe that was built maybe in the 80s, in which they did use, in fact, hardy board siding. Similar lot, in fact, interior lot, but it also has more of a street presence than what we actually have. And they were approved for hardy board as well. So I submitted that with the copies of.
So, Mr. Chairman, my question would be more to staff at this point. So, Andy, this applicant is saying that the rules he's saying differently from what you're saying, that he can have his hardy board according to the rules.
compatible and it's visible, which is what the Continental District guidelines go up and what's visible from the street. And we said, when we brought it forward, we said it partially complied, we said brick in front. But technically, I wouldn't say cardboard is compatible material when you're talking about the main construction materials of the neighborhood.
Yeah, we've done work in that neighborhood, as I recall. You have to pretty much match the materials all the way around on the building. There is no back facade.
That one, well, it might be in this area. There's a little bit difference between how the heights people are, little people, but, and they are in the process of rewriting all that to make it more clear, I guess, but right now it just says compatibility, and the board, when they brought it before, viewed that as being that it needed to be corrected.
But in staff's opinion, this is not a compatible material as hardy board.
Not when it's that visible.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, were you formulating a question?
And I also might add that we agreed to go 10 feet back, which I think is more than what is typically required, to help take away from some of the side view. And that's from first floor to second floor as well.
Commissioner Robinson, were you formulating a question?
No. So, it's, well, okay, while we wait for staff. So, you're showing a proposal from your masonry contractor, 51,000. What, is that correct?
That's for the entire job. I see the
Front facing
wall.
is 12,000. The additional sides are 19,000 apiece. So it's $38,000 for, well, just a hair under 40 grand for the sides. Whereas if we went with material that, again, we believe to be acceptable, it would cost us about $5,000 to $6,000 to do it. So it's a significant difference in price and cost.
So, on the staff's position that hardy board is not compatible?
Well, the way it's worded, I mean, the way it says we're compatible, we never said it, we didn't totally object to them using hardy board on the one, especially on maybe the north side so much, because it's not as visible as the south side with being exposed with the one-story building. But we never said it actually complied with the standards either, because it's kind of it says with original building materials. Right. I'm not sure that, even if you had an addition where you had a frame addition, you wouldn't have brick only 10 feet back on the side. If you're going for that, to look like you would just have had a rear addition. So.
So let me, just to clarify this for the record. Is it your testimony that the hardy board complies or does not comply in this use?
I would say it doesn't comply in this use, probably. And even the first time, although we weren't necessarily asking for them not to do it in the first place, but we never actually said it complied with the standards.
Okay.
And the board made the determination that they needed to be, that the hardy board didn't comply.
I'm just trying to clarify what your testimony is today.
Yes.
Hold on one second.
Oh, okay.
Your testimony is that it does not comply in this usage. Okay. Sir.
My understanding also is that initially Cultural Resources did it. I could be incorrect in saying I was under the impression that Cultural Resources had improved the hardy backboard the initial time with our initial drawings being approved through their office preliminary drawings.
We
So.
never approved it.
Okay.
We never said it applied standards.
Okay.
We didn't totally object to it.
Okay, that's what I mean. We were under the impression it was.
Never approved it.
Okay, we were under the impression that it was approved, and that's why it initially came before the board. My information that I was given, and then the final drawings that I saw. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And I see you've got a fair amount of the construction finished. The foundations, were they put in to accommodate bricks?
Pardon?
Was the foundation built
Yes.
to accommodate bricks?
Yes.
That is a very good engineer question. I am delighted to have you here. The ordinance is so wise. Commissioner Hines?
I'm just gonna say what's on my mind. I think my real issue is that here we have.
We're gonna hear some testimony from neighbors also.
Oh,
So
okay.
these will be questions directed either
Well,
to staff or to the developer.
Yeah, I mean,
Ellen.
I'll just say to you, I just think it, what has been approved by, or upheld by the Preservation Board is the rendering with the brick facade on all sides, and that's what was agreed to, that's what was approved, and that's what everyone here was under the impression it was moving forward, and then mid-construction to kind of change it and scale it back seems a little bit, off-putting, and I can understand why there would be some concerns about it. That's it.
That wasn't quite a question, so
No, I guess it was. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Absher?
I'm Frank Absher from the neighborhood, and I swear to tell the truth.
At least until midnight.
Just until midnight, thank you. The board approved this project with full brick on both sides, and the appellant agreed to that. This is the first time that the appellant has agreed to something that really made a difference as far as we're concerned, because ever since that property was acquired, it's been nothing but problems for the neighborhood. We had to call City Hall to come out and cut the weeds when they refused to cut the weeds. We've had problems with detritus and runoff in the alleys because of the construction. The list goes on. And we have essentially someone who is not from our area coming in and saying, we now want to do things our way rather than the way that the board has approved it. Mr. Colleen, you are correct in that every building in that neighborhood has brick on all visible sides all the way up. And this person wants to come in and change the rules. And I'm here to ask you as a board of directors to continue to adhere to the rules as you've done in the past with the great historic neighborhoods of St. Louis, Lafayette Square, Soulard, and Compton Heights, and ours, and hold this developer to his commitment, because it is not our problem that he now suddenly says, oh, I'm sorry, this costs too much money. I wasn't ready for that, when he agreed to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Good evening. I'm the property owner directly to the north at 1926 Virginia, and I agree to tell the truth.
And your name is Darren Smith?
Darren Smith, yes. Yes, thank you. So, yeah, I believe I included some pictures of the property from my backyard with my email that I had sent. When we went through this process originally, you were very gracious and allowed the neighborhood to have input on the property. We had several neighborhood meetings, including some meetings with Jason Pierce, an architect that lives in our neighborhood, who helped us navigate some of the process. And he met with the architects prior to our final meeting, and we all met at a local establishment in the neighborhood. And he said that the developer had agreed to put brick all the way down both sides. The major concern on the south side of the property is its exposure, of course, to the one-story home right next door. And then on our side of the property on the north, it's just very overwhelming in our property. I did take some pictures, as I mentioned, to kind of show that. So we were worried about different things with the siding not being cohesive. The only other new infill property in our neighborhood is in the corner of Compton Hill Place and Geyer Avenue, and it's bricked on all four sides. Kind of similar because the one side is very exposed, much as this property is. So back to our meeting, that led by our neighbor Jason, we all said, you know what, now that he's agreed to this, we're fine. They fixed some of the window sizes, I believe was another issue we had at the time. And so we got through all those issues and we all did, as a neighborhood, agree to that. So I'm just here today to ask that that ruling be upheld. And we have the brick all the way back on both sides.
Thank you. Mr. Maxwell?
I'm John Maxwell, and I agree to tell the truth. I live at 3305 Russell, so that's out of my backyard. Basically, the picture on the right is what I see. That's brief state other things that were said. I really agree with Commissioner Vines that to come back afterwards halfway through construction and say this is too expensive is outrageous. They agreed to this to begin with, and you know, we love our neighborhood. I'm doing replacement windows now, and we're putting them in exactly like they were. It costs more to do it that way, but we live in these historical neighborhoods, and we like that they're historical neighborhoods and that we have some method to maintain that. So we ask that you stick with the original decision.
Just to clarify the testimony that I heard from the appellant, he said that it would be more expensive, but he also testified that one reason he appealed is that it had come to his attention that the material was actually permitted. So he had two arguments that I heard.
Well, it's, as was mentioned by others here, that there are no other buildings in the neighborhood that have...
Oh, I'm not saying he's correct. I'm simply clarifying his testimony.
I'm not sure.
He said it.
I'm
not saying that it's true.
Oh, yeah, he did say that. Yeah. Yeah, I heard him say that.
Thank you. Kit Jenkins?
I have nothing to say.
Kathy Greminger?
What,
Yeah.
I just agreed with the folks that spoke before.
You want to do that on the record?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Kathy Greminger, and I'll state the truth.
Thank you.
I just want it, what has been said before, I would just be adding same comments. I'm also a neighbor. I've lived in the neighborhood for almost 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on just one second. Anything else from staff? Okay, Mr. Askins?
Thank you. Do I need to swear in again? Okay.
You're still under oath, and we know who you are.
Good. So I wanted to also kind of touch on what they're saying, or add to what they're saying. Going back, as I was listening to testimony from a previous project, in which the gentleman articulated that in the moment of doing these deals, you can kind of get into a place where things change in the field. And I think his issue was, I believe, the Russell property, I think at 1001 Russell, in which he was hoping to modify some of his materials as well. I'm not asking to modify it to something that is not permitted or that is not commonplace in the area. And yes, when you're in the midst of doing construction, sometimes you do run into cost overages that can be somewhat extensive. And this is an extensive and significant amount. So it's not me coming back in the 11th hour and saying, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to change it. We're looking to try and modify it to something that is, in fact, commonplace in the neighborhood. It's not a material that is vinyl or anything of that nature. So just wanted to clarify that as well.
You know, we had discussed as a board whether or not this appeal was properly heard. And on advice of council, we decided that it was. You have every right under the ordinance to come to us.
Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Bissentainer.
I can figure out how to say all the denies and denies.
This, by the way, this concludes the testimony. Commissioner Bissentainer.
I move that the board deny the appeal of the director's denial of the addendum, therefore uphold the director's.
So we
Uphold.
uphold the director's denial?
Uphold the director's denial.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Commissioner Byzantiner?
I went through a lot of discussions on this first time around, and I believe that this is the appropriate thing to do for this building in this location. And the building is already well under construction, and this is not an appropriate time, in my opinion, to come back and try to change the plans that were already agreed to.
Okay. Next on this side?
Well, I would just say to the applicant, if the vote doesn't go his way, a comparison to that Russell project, I think the big difference is they're not under construction. They don't have 7 people from the neighborhood talking against them here, the alderman and the neighborhood association against them. Those things matter to this board. We do listen to the citizens who live around these projects, so we respect your desire to save money on your project. I mean, we're all trying to make ends meet, but that's the big difference is the verbal opposition to your design, and also just a close reading of their neighborhood guidelines. I don't see how this is an acceptable material visible from the street. So,
Commissioner Robinson, you've had projects tied to your ankle and dropping to the bottom of a near bottomless pit. do you have a comment?
So, yeah, I guess I'm torn. I am listening to cultural resources who have stated maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Although upon sharp cross-questioning by the
But
chairman.
upon sharp,
Yes.
I question whether it's whether the requirement is for brick just because the ordinance is a little foggy.
Was this the project on which we heard the testimony that the ordinances were foggy?
Yeah, that would be it.
Okay.
And so because of that, doing development myself and having experienced, as you go through a project, running into cost overruns that, especially when you realize what the market will bear, that may cause you to lose money on a project, which I have done. I give some hard thought based on what we've got as a bid for masonry work, and that's substantial. Again, I've done projects, $40,000. Had I have changed some things, would be significant. It's in one particular case, it was the difference between losing money on a project and being in the black on it. So, yeah. So I can understand the change, whether it's 10 feet or whether it's something different. I think is up for interpretation. I don't know that 10 feet is necessarily the number, but yeah.
Tiffany, we count on you for your neighborhood eyes. And because you sell these things, it might be $40,000 more expensive.
Okay, my thoughts are, I wasn't here in May or whenever you guys, and so I understand Commissioner
Killeen.
Anthony.
Oh, Anthony.
Yeah, in terms of the fogginess, because those were my thoughts in the beginning, but then to hear that it was agreed upon in May, and everyone agreed upon the brick, and just knowing the neighborhood is all brick, I would tend to uphold the director's denial.
Yeah, I just want to make one thing really clear. I think the sentiment was heard that, you know, outside developer coming in and doing this, and I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I think sometimes outside eyes can be beneficial to neighborhoods, especially in cities. We need some fresh, objective, new infusion in our great old city. And I welcome your investment in our city. That said, it looks to me these are two distinct projects. They're two different projects. The project that was approved is the all brick, and the one that is now being proposed midstream is one that would have to be taken up on its own merits. I don't know that this is the appropriate time to do that, given the way the ordinance and the process works, to my knowledge. I do not think this project, as amended, proposed today, fits in well with the neighborhood. I don't think it's consistent with the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and the ordinance may be vague, but I think it's also, the precedent is clear. And I just, I think this is kind of, to me, it strikes me as being more of a bait and switch scenario where you find out you could save money, so therefore do everything possible to, you know, kind of, for lack of a better term, to kind of dumb down the project to save where you can at the expense of the neighborhood aesthetic. And I think that if the developer agreed to the project as approved, then that's what should be built there. And I can't really see any way to justify otherwise at this point in time.
Commissioner Byzantine or anything? Okay. Commissioners, there's a motion on the table. It is to uphold the director's denial. It has been seconded. We will vote. Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Byzantiner, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
The ayes have it. The director's denial is upheld. Commissioners, we have one more item on our formal agenda, 816 Allen Avenue. It is an appeal of a director's denial.
All right, I'm Andrea Gagan. I swear to tell the truth. I need to enter into the record the enabling ordinance 64689 is amended by 64925, and the Soulard Historic District ordinance 62382, as well as the PowerPoint and the agenda. This is 816 Allen Avenue. We're talking about this portion here. It's kind of hard to, it's a narrow street, so it's a little hard to get a full view of the large of the building. This is the building question. And these are, this is a Google shot of the original windows because we don't actually have an actual photo of it. As you can see, the windows had lugs. What you can't really see on this photo because it's I mean, it was not the best quality photo in the world, is that there was a recessed panel on this mullion. You sort of can see it at the top and maybe a little bit at the bottom, but it's a little bit difficult to see. The windows were replaced without a permit, and this is what is put in. What you're seeing under this meeting rail here is the top of the screen, which gives it the appearance of like an offset meeting rail. Also, the extruded brick mold is larger than the original was, which has kind of made the windows slightly smaller than they were. And we've kind of lost the recessed panel here because of the coil stock that was wrapped with. And you really can't, they do have lugs, but they're kind of difficult to see with the screen in place. This is some windows actually the same type of windows that were placed on the side of the building quite some time ago. But they did not, at the time the screen was apparently different. You don't have that R up there. And the trim and the mullions weren't wrapped on the side elevation. And those were actually approved. The windows themselves are approved historic replacement windows. It's just they're not quite the right size, and the coil stock and the extruded brick mold is something we would not normally allow, or is not allowed under historic district standards. As I said, there's a reduced glass area. The original window sash had very narrow profile. The extruded brick mold and aluminum coil stock wrapping the mullions does not replicate the original elements, and the half screen creates the look of an offsetting meeting rail. As I said, they were installed without a permit, and the Cultural Resource Office recommends that the preservation will hold the director's denial of the application as not comply with the Soulard Certified Historic District standards.
Is there any community or aldermanic?
I haven't heard from the alderman. The Soulard Restoration Group is not taking a stance on it one way or the other.
Andy, can you go back to the two photos?
Sure.
Well, you're formulating your question. Why aren't they not taking a stance?
I think there was some differences of opinion in they couldn't come to an agreement, I think, was the issue.
Okay.
On what I guess not only them being replaced, but the how, what elements of that were important.
And this was done all over this facade?
Yeah, it was 18 of the, it's actually not the entire facade. The upper windows have not, these windows haven't been done up here.
Okay.
But all of these windows and these two, and as well as I think the basement windows here.
All without a permit in Soulard?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
We did receive I believe we did receive a complaint about it.
You did receive a complaint?
Yeah, I think so, yes, somebody called.
Anything around the corner, or is it?
They come, actually, you know what, actually, I think they got stopped by the building, it may have gotten stopped by the building inspector.
And
Obviously, they were pretty much done at that point, so.
Just this facade, or does it go around the corner?
No, the side windows, some of the side windows had already been replaced with a permit quite some time, like probably 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, is it
But they didn't
Jefferson
wrap
or-
the trim or anything.
Or, no, Franklin. Okay. Okay.
Further questions?
I'm sorry, I interrupted Commissioner Robinson. He was in the middle of a question.
From which applicant?
The current one. So, yeah, so I see that. So do you have any thoughts to the removal of the coils?
Yeah, I think the removal of the coil stock and the brick mold, the extruded brick mold would be an improvement over what's there now. I mean, it wouldn't totally take care of the issue, but it would definitely be an improvement.
Okay. Would they be granted a permit to do that, in your opinion?
Well, we couldn't, the board, I mean, because still under the standards, they really don't comply just because of some of the other issues.
So
But
that, as far as we're concerned, that would not be a satisfactory solution.
But, well, I mean, I said, it would be satisfactory over not changing it at all. But it wouldn't be obviously the ideal.
So, I'm sorry, is staff recommending any kind of a compromise on this, or is it just tear it out and start over?
Yeah, I mean, because it doesn't really comply, we can't say, oh yeah, that's kind of your purview.
Okay.
Because if they were the right, if they were the right size and the screens were okay, we probably could say that. But since I think the brick mold has made has decreased that size a little bit. I'm not sure without measurements and everything. It'd be kind of hard to tell whether that would be.
So to clarify your testimony, from my mind, your testimony is that these buildings, which were installed without a permit, these windows are, in fact, not complying with your limits. And you're asking us to uphold the director's denial.
Right.
Okay, let's have the appellant, please. Thank you very much for your patience.
No problem. It's been fun listening to all this. I've learned a lot, so
It is one of my goals for people who have to wait a long time to be amused. Thank you again, though. Tell me your name.
I'm Brian Dickerson with Dalco Home Remodeling, and I agreed to tell the truth.
If we wanted to find you again, what would your address be?
You can find me at 216 Chestnut Hill Drive.
In where?
In O'Fallon, Missouri.
Okay.
63368.
I won't find you, but somebody could. Okay, and your testimony is going to be the truth?
Yes.
Okay. What happened?
So I did some work for the Archdiocese in their compound or campus about 2.5 years ago, non-historical. They asked me to come in and replace some windows. They were doing some renovation to a room, turning it into an office building rather than, it used to be an auditorium. So they wanted to get rid of some obscure windows and make them clear glass so people could see through them. Shortly after that project was done, the Archdiocese called me about this project. Let me back up 1 second. I'm the general manager of Dalco Home Remodeling. I do retail work. I don't do commercial work, or I've never done historical work before. So they asked me to look at these windows, so I did. During that, they said, here's a list of windows that are approved. So I took that list, and hey, I know Quaker. I've dealt with Quaker on some remodel jobs before. So I called Quaker and said, hey, this H300 window's approved for this historical district. Can I get some quotes on it? Here's my sizes. This is what I need. I sent them pictures, told them it was a historical job, gave them the address, and they advised me that, that this exterior paneling for the brick mold would be acceptable to put on the exterior.
That's the manufacturer?
Right, yeah, this came from the manufacturer Quaker. So that's what we did. After the point of bidding, it went about a year before the Archdiocese called me back and said, hey, everything's approved, let's go. Me being ignorant, not knowing that the permit needed to be down here, or, that you guys had to approve it, or somebody had to approve it, I went ahead and we went down, final measured the windows, ordered them, put them in. Our third day of install, one of the inspectors stopped us. I immediately went down there and I think I met Chris, right? Yeah. Bob, Chris, sorry. And was like, hey, what do we do here? We've screwed up. We know we screwed up. What can we do? And that's why I'm here, is, I guess, denied it, and they said the next thing you do is take it to appeals. So I'm taking it to appeals. I'm taking ownership that we screwed up. I just want to try to find some middle ground to where we can rectify the situation.
Well, we're not the middle ground people today. Is the job that's there now consistent with the ordinance or not?
Okay.
Guys, today. Is there anything else that you'd like to introduce into the record?
I think Andrea had mentioned that we wrapped the mullions. We actually had a custom piece of heavy gauge aluminum bent by Foreman Fabricators down in St. Louis. It wasn't something that we broke on site. This is heavy gauge aluminum. It's almost like a extruded aluminum. So it's not, we didn't use cheap coil stock down there when we did this work.
Questions?
Yeah, I guess I don't understand why permits weren't pulled.
Well, I assume that when they said everything was approved, that they did all that. As I mentioned, I've personally never dealt with any historical or needed permits and done any work down in this area, and I know better if I do in the future, or I just stay away from them, unfortunately.
May I direct one to staff?
Yes.
We've seen much worse. Is there anything we can work with, Dan? Is there any compromise you see here, or is it tear it out? Start over, Dan or Jan?
Can I ask a question of the applicant? Is that one unit or is it pieced together? So can we remove the mullion cover and the brick mold and restore what was there originally?
We can attempt to. Most of the brick mold was rotten.
Okay, but it's
The exterior wood,
placeable
okay.
and removing of the screen.
That can come right out. They won't have a problem with removing that.
Is the mullion gone?
Is the mullion itself gone? No, it's still there.
It's still there?
There's, so the indent that used to be there,
Right.
the face of it is gone.
Oh, I see.
So there was a, if you can see this, there was a little indent.
We allow you to keep the windows, the screens come off, and you restore all of the wood trim, including the mullion, in wood and paint it.
Okay.
So the windows themselves, the Quaker windows,
Yeah,
are compliant.
Are compliant.
So we're really talking mostly about the trim here. And the screen. But maybe if we can get the trim, we could live with the screen stay. So we could get the mold left. You don't want to do that?
The screens are terrible.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
So,
We can get rid of the screens. They don't use these
Dan.
windows anyway, so the screens are,
so what we would do is to uphold your denial. And we have seen in the course of this presentation that if they came to you with a new proposal to remove this bit and that bit, that you would approve it. Is that correct?
Looks like there's something we can work with.
Okay, Commissioner Killeen, you have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Preservation Board denied this application, or uphold the director's denial.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none. I'm calling a roll. Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vicentino, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, the ayes have it, the director's denial is upheld. Now you guys do what you need to do. Commissioners, this concludes
thank you.
the printed portion of our agenda. Commissioner Vines, have you got new business to suggest?
Oh, I was just maybe gonna expand on what we discussed in the lobby.
Commissioners, do you think that we could, at some point in meetings in the future, have a comment period for the public on matters not currently on the agenda? My thought would be that we would have it, say, right at 4 o'clock, which would give Commissioner Robinson his 20 minutes or so to get here and help us build a quorum. But, I mean, we have historically because this is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting, not had a non-agenda discussion, maybe we could have a 30-second or 2-minute or whatever comment period. And we have to put it onto the agenda, obviously.
So what would,
Want to think about it?
I guess what would be I like the discourse and public dialogue, but what is the end goal and what could be accomplished within our purview by that?
The thought would be that there are at any given moment neighborhood concerns that are arising that are not immediately addressed on the agenda. It's too hard to find my alderman. It's too easy to get an approval to put a gas station in. I mean, as long as we held the topic of discussion to matters that the board could theoretically be discussing at a future date, not just coming in and bitching about the mayor, the board of aldermen, or their dogs or family. I'm sort of open to the idea. I don't think it would add much to the meeting because we do a lot of early stalling anyway, trying to get 5 commissioners present.
how long do you think it would last?
I think that we could probably set 10 minutes as a period of time.
Great.
And then would it be up to the board to pursue any of the points that were brought up?
You know, we have a variety of statutory powers under the ordinance that we don't often talk about. And it is possible that maybe what we want to do someday is to have Barb go back through and tell us some of the things that we can do. I mean, we're pretty busy doing just what is put in front of us, but we have affirmative powers under the ordinances that we rarely exercise. You all want to think about that, and we'll.
I like it.
Yeah, I think.
And we'll discuss it next time? Okay. Do I hear any other, sorry, is there any other business? Do I hear a motion? Yes.
Oh, how about next
Oh,
meeting?
we need to set our.
December meeting. 18th?
Director Krasnoff, what suits you?
Well, I heard the 18th.
I think that's
I know that's getting close to Christmas and all.
Alderman Navarro would like it to be tomorrow.
Well, Alderman Navarro wants a neighborhood meeting to happen first.
Okay.
So,
I mean, we're gonna want a quorum. So,
do you have a quorum on the
18th works for me.
Works for me.
that's 3.
We're gonna need chocolate or something Christmassy.
We can make it fun.
Hot chocolate.
yeah, hot chocolate.
Honey, what do you think?
Did you hear Commissioner Colleen?
Could you be
Yeah,
there
potluck night.
on the 18th?
What's that?
Could you be present on the 18th? Okay,
All right.
so,
I'll tell her to get that meeting scheduled.
great. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Were you on the 18th?
Hearing no objection, we stand adjourned. Commissioners, thank you very much for your patience.